Good evening and welcome to the Wallingford Public Schools Board of Education meeting for Monday, October 25th, 2021. Call this meeting to order. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand as you are able for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mrs. Lavelle, may we please have a roll call?
Mrs. Allenson?
Here.
Mrs. Costelli? Mrs. Corso? Ms. Levette?
Here.
Mrs. Purcell?
Here.
Mrs. Raccio?
Here.
Mr. Reynolds?
Here.
Mr. Ross?
Here.
Mr. Votto?
Here.
9 members present and voting.
Thank you, Mrs. Lavelle. Next item on the agenda is Student Board Representatives, Lyman Hall, Aaron Chiaffi. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Macy Bucari. I'm here in place of Aaron Chaffee tonight. I'm our senior class president at Lyman Hall. We've had a pretty busy beginning to our school year, and we intend to keep the ball rolling with the abundance of events we have planned for the next couple of weeks, starting with our homecoming. That'll be outside this Friday, the 29th. Then we have our annual Powder Puff game scheduled for the 24th. Fall sports will be coming to an end, and winter sports will be picking up shortly. Students can now register for their AP exams if they plan on testing in May. Our school counselors are holding application workshops during our study halls to assist students in Naviance and the application process. Students grades 9 to 11 have just taken their PSATs on the 13th, and their scores will be released in December. Our school counselors presented classroom lessons about the PSATs, transitioning to high school, and post-secondary planning processes. The Parent-Teacher Advisory Council meeting will be held on the 28th. On October 27th, is the Hidden in Plain Sight presentation presented by Wallingford Youth and Social Services. It is an interactive drug program for parents, caregivers, and adults who work with youth. On November 1st is our faculty football game. On November 17th is our National Honor Society induction. And on November 25th is the Thanksgiving football game that will be held at Lyman Hall High School. Thank you.
Thank you very much for filling in. We appreciate it. From Mark T. Sheehan High School, Paul and Isha are not able to attend the meeting this evening. However, they did provide a report, which Mrs. Raccio will read into the record.
Thank you, Mrs. Levesque. Since the last Board of Ed meeting, we held our in-person parent-teacher conferences on Tuesday, October 12th. Parents were allowed to meet with their children's teachers, getting updates about the classroom and individual student conferences. We held the PSAT for freshmen, sophomores, and juniors on October 13th. Seniors were able to take the seal of biliteracy during this time. Each class met and held their class elections on October 22nd. We plan on holding our homecoming dance outside of the senior court entrance from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturday, October 30th. Students are able to buy tickets with $25 and 2 canned goods. There is ongoing student council-sponsored canned food drive. From Monday, October 25th to Friday, October 29th, it is Red Ribbon Week, and Sheehan brings awareness to substance abuse and prevention. We will have activities during this week which focus on the theme, Drug-Free Looks Like Me, including taping one of our principals to a wall. We have had regularly weekly college visits. For instance, this week we are hosting visits from schools such as UNH, Salve Regina, and Washington College. Upcoming events include students who are looking forward to dressing up for Halloween on Friday, October 29th, sponsored by the Student Council. Boys and girls cross-country teams have their Class M state championships happening on October 30th. Sheehan field hockey team celebrated their senior night last Thursday, October 21st, celebrating a 4-0 victory against Lyman Hall. Sheehan boys soccer celebrated their senior night on the 22nd with a 2-1 victory against Career. Girls Swim and Dive SCC Championship is also this Saturday. Today, the girls soccer team has their senior night against Jonathan Law at 5:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Raccio. As always, we appreciate all of the information that is shared with us, the board, and the public from our student board representatives. Thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is presentation and awards, which we don't have any this evening. And we're on to public comment. It's my understanding that no one has signed up for public comment. However, I do have a comment to read into the record at this time. This is from Ms. Carrie Lentz. Good afternoon. I submit this email to the Wallingford Board of Education to be read into the record at the next meeting. I am requesting the Board of Education draft a letter to the Office of Governor Ned Lamont voicing parents' concerns and opinions over masking our children. We would like the letter to state that the board has heard from many parents requesting to have a choice on whether to mask or unmask their children. We would like the letter to also reflect on parents' statements of how this has negatively impacted their families and that the Board of Education support parents' choice. This request is not asking the Board of Education to go against any executive order, but rather to stand in unity with the parents in their district. I do not want to lose sight of the reason for writing this email, and that is that parents want actual action on this request. More than thank you for your comment. Parents are looking to the board to support them by taking action and writing a letter to our governor. I am requesting a response to this statement on what action the board will take. I understand that some parents have reached out to the board to request that the masks remain in effect, to which I reply they can for their children. Masking our kids should be a parental choice. If a parent chooses to mask their child, that is their right, and that does not encroach on the right of a parent who does not want to mask their child. However, forced masking does encroach on the rights of those parents who would choose not to. I believe a letter written from the Board of Education requesting parent choice also shows unity for those that wish to continue to mask their children. The letter would not be asking to remove the masks in their entirety, rather just to allow for parent choice. Please refer to the Brookfield and Fairfield Board of Education as your guide, as I have read their letters to the governor in support of their parents. This is what we are requesting from our Wallingford Board of Education members. With much appreciation, Carrie Lentz. I don't believe there's any further comments to be read, so the next item on the agenda is executive session. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of, if I could just finish, please. Sure. For the purposes of discussion of appointment of candidates for teaching positions, discussion of appointment of candidates for coaching positions, discussion of acceptance of leaves of absence, discussion of memorandum of agreement, MOA for nurses union, discussion of memorandum of agreement, MOA for Wallingford Education Association, discussion of memorandum of agreement, MOA for Para-Educators Union, and discussion and review of the superintendent's goals for 2021-2022.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Raccio. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion has carried. We are in executive session. I'll entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So move.
Second.
Mr. Ross and Mrs. Allenson. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, we're out of executive session. I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda items 7.1 through 7.9. Moved by Mr. Votto,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Ross. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion has passed. There were no items removed from the consent agenda. This evening, Mrs. Raccio will be reading the correspondence, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to thank, on behalf of the board, Mark Verna and Verna Builders and Developers for their donation of $500 to fund staff T-shirts for Parker Farms Elementary School. I saw the T-shirts. They were awesome. I would also like to thank Phyllis Savo for a generous donation of books for the Professional Learning Library for Teachers, and the list of books is amazing. That is for Lyman Hall Library, valued at $1,025. Thank you for that. And another very generous donation from Christopher Poronsky. This is a donation to Sheehan High School for families in need, and he donated $2,000. So thank you all for those donations. Very much appreciated. Madam Chair?
Thank you, Mrs. Raccio. On to committee reports. The ACES Governing Board met on October 14, 2021. The minutes of the September 9, 2021 meeting were approved. During the Executive Director's report, two longtime ACES Governing Board members, Lynn Campo from Hamden and Dorothy Logan from North Haven, were recognized for their years of service and dedication to the ACES Governing Board. A ribbon-cutting ceremony for the grant-funded electric bus, which also includes a solar charging station, will take place on October 15, 2021 at 1 p.m. On November 2nd, 2021, Dr. Ruby Payne will provide professional learning regarding emotional poverty. The Executive Director provided updates on COVID matters and Executive Order 13G. Upcoming contract negotiations, real estate matters, and the investment recommendation from the prior audit were reviewed. Mr. Cook presented the Human Resources report. He has a new assistant, and there are 84 new staff members and 15 resignations. He reviewed COVID protocols and information regarding vaccination status. Mr. Cook indicated that 91% of staff have been vaccinated. The Teacher Residency Program, TRP, to increase diversity was discussed. Demographic information shared with the Governing Board indicated that 72% of students are students of color, excluding ECA, while 12.8% of the certified staff and 14.7% of administrators were persons of color. Under the Curriculum and Instruction Report, Mr. Rice indicated that all schools have full in-person instruction. He indicated that there were concerns regarding challenges at the Wintergreen Magnet School with 17 individuals quarantined. The Department of Public Health was contacted with regard to positive COVID cases. There have been concerns about unvaccinated individuals and third-party private duty contracted persons. The curriculum management plan was shared with the Governing Board. All students, regardless of the school or program they attend, will have access to an aligned core curriculum founded on state-adopted standards in each content area. Information about a Teaching for Black Lives study group was shared. The Governing Board approved the filing of the fiscal report subject to audit, the Human Resources report, and the Early Head Start updates. Under old business, the Governing Board authorized the Executive Director to execute the contract for the sale of real estate on Skiff Street in Hamden and to terminate the lease of property in Clinton. Under new business, the governing board approved the transfer of $2 million to the Liberty Bank Guaranteed Investment Fund. This transfer was based on the audit status and investment recommendation from a prior audit. The governing board entered into an executive session for the purposes of reviewing 2 stipulated agreements involving student discipline and a real estate transaction. The governing board came out of executive session and voted affirmatively on the stipulated agreements, and the meeting was adjourned. The next ACES governing board meeting is scheduled for November 18th, 2021. And I did provide the copy of the curriculum management plan to Ms. Latour so that we can be apprised of what our students at ACES, what their plan is for their curriculum. The next item of business would be the business think tank. Mrs. Castelli.
So there was no meeting, and our next meeting is November 5th.
Thank you. STEM Steering Committee, Mrs. Allenson.
No meeting that I know of.
Okay, thank you. System-wide PTAC, Mrs. Latour.
So we held our October meeting last Tuesday evening. The meeting started with about 16 people in attendance. Community events were shared by all. Ms. Belizzi shared current information about the busing situation within the district and the steps that we have taken to address some of the things that are occurring on a consistent basis, such as delays and a driver shortage. The successful parent-teacher conferences that have been occurring in the last several weeks at multiple schools, and upcoming school events. Mr. Rivard, the chairperson of System-Wide PTAC, gave an update about the Parent Choice Awards. They will be held on February 23rd. They will be virtual. They will be held also in 2 sessions. Staff from all 12 schools are represented this year. They had an abundance of nominations this year, which will be nice to see at the award ceremony in February. Several members of the group brought up new topics for consideration this year. They will be discussed at next month's meeting, which will be held on November 16th at 6 p.m., and it will be a virtual meeting.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Latour. Special Education PTAC update, Ms. Turner.
Good evening. Special Ed PTAC met on October 7th. We had a presentation on life-centered planning and guardianship for our students as they're getting older. We discussed the parent survey results from the summer. We also provided a district update in regard to where special education services are going, what the program is looking like this year, and our goals. We provided some time for parents to ask questions and to provide comments and ask for support regarding special education programming. We've also shared that we will be doing that at every meeting now as one of the results of the parent survey is that the parents would like more time to just problem solve and ask questions. We had elections for officers and the special education, the system-wide PTAC representative. Our next meeting is on November 4th at 6 o'clock. We will be introducing the new IEP that starts on July 1st and doing a training on what an IEP should look like and the parents' role in that process.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Plan of Conservation and Development, I believe we don't have a report this evening, and Food Service Strategic Plan Committee. November 10th is the first meeting. Thank you, Mr. Bondi. I don't believe there's any old business to come before the board, so we're on to the Instructional Committee. Mrs. Corso and Mrs. Purcell, please.
Thank you. Our first item of business tonight is to approve candidates for teaching positions. So I make a motion that the Board of Education approve the appointment of the following candidates for teaching positions for the 2021-2022 school year, contingent upon proper Connecticut certification as recommended by the Superintendent of Schools. At Mark T. Sheehan High School, chemistry teacher Tyler Peter Hansel, and a one-year position, recovery teacher Kyler Smith.
Patty Purcell seconds the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Congratulations. Next, I make a motion that the Board of Ed accept the appointment of the following candidate to a coaching position at Sheehan High School, cheerleading coach Ashley Ford.
Patty Purcell seconds the motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Some leaves of absence. I make a motion that a leave of absence for Samantha Stanton be approved without pay and in accordance with the provisions of the current teacher's contract from November 3rd, 2021 through January 31st, 2022.
Patty Purcell seconds the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. I make a motion that a leave of absence for Cassandra Cullis be approved without pay and in accordance with the provisions of the current teacher's contract from November 17th, 2021 through November 30, 2021.
Patty Purcell seconds the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. So next, items 12.4 to 12.13 are some policy changes. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Latour.
Thank you, Mrs. Corso. The first, these are all second reads. As a reminder, you saw these at the October Instructional Committee meeting for their first read. We'll start with 12.4, which is policy 4112.52, 4212.52. This is in the personnel series for certified and non-certified staff. It's in regards to fingerprinting and criminal justice information services. This was a mandatory policy that our policy book was lacking. It moved forward to its second read as written, so no changes were recommended in the first read. Does anyone have any concerns or language changes that they would like to propose at this time? Nope, great. 12.5 is policy 5125.11, health and medical records, otherwise known as HIPAA. This is being brought forward to you as a second read as written. This was also a mandatory policy provided to us by CABE that our policy book was lacking. There were no changes recommended after our first read. Does anyone have any questions or changes they would like to propose for the second read? The next policy, policy 5145.14, uniform treatment of recruiters. After our first read, we did decide to change the language in terms of how we specified attaining majority status. We chose to use the terminology 18 years of age. That change was made. It is in the 4th paragraph on the first page. A question did come up in the first read and asked, a board member asked how the schools notify families of when the child turns 18 that they can change their response to the release of directory information. We do not, I did check with both high school principals, we do not initiate that communication. It is up to the parent and the student to provide written documentation that they would like their designation changed. That is consistent between both high schools at this time. Are there any other changes of language or concerns with this policy as written? Our next policy is 12.7. It is sexual abuse prevention and education program. After the first read, this was also a mandatory policy that was missing from our policy book. We did recommend after the first read to strike the alternate definition of sexual assault. That is the only change of language that we decided to do after the first read. Are there any changes or recommendations that you have after the second read for this? Great. The next policy, 12.8, the regulation, 12.7, the regulation to the sexual abuse prevention and education program was brought forward to the second read as written. No changes were recommended after the first read. Does anyone have any changes that they would like to make to the language at this time? No? Great. Item number 12.8, which is policy 6164.11, alcohol, drugs, and tobacco use, went forward to the second read as written. No changes were recommended. Does anyone have any changes to language that they would like to recommend at this time? Wonderful. This next policy, 6172, alternative education programs. We didn't have any specific language changes after the first read, but a question did come up in regards to the alternative language to consider on the bottom. We wondered, you know, because it's such a short little paragraph, the intent of that alternative language is really to replace the entire rather lengthy first part. So I would recommend to the board to keep the first part, which is very specific and detailed. I feel it's just more clear and provides clarity for parents. And I do not recommend using the alternative language to consider in this case. Does anyone have any concerns with that as we proceed going to our third read at the end of next month? No? Fantastic. And then I'm going to lump together 1210, 1211, 1212. And all of these are our non-discrimination policies and regulations in the series for community, personnel, and for students. This is a required change based on some clarity in the legislation in terms of the definition of a veteran, some additional language additions per the legislation. These changes come to us from our attorneys, Shipman Goodwin. We did not recommend any language changes after the first read. So does anyone have any concerns with the language as written after the second read? No? Great. And then our last one of the evening is policy 12.13, and that is policy 2110, administrative leeway in absence of BOE policy. This is an existing policy that we had in our policy book. We changed the series from board governance to administration. We added the language and or as soon as practicable after the superintendent's decision should be reported back to the Board of Education. So just clarifying that language a little bit so that our superintendent does not need to wait until the next regular meeting. Does anyone have any other additional language changes that they would like to make for this particular policy? No? Right. So you will see all of these again next month on consent for any final recommendations before, if you have any. And this will be the first batch that the policy committee was able to get through, which was really great work for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Latour. This concludes our instructional committee portion of the agenda. We'll turn it back over to you, Mrs. Levesque.
Thank you, Mrs. Corso and Mrs. Purcell. The next item on the agenda is Operations Committee. Mrs. Allenson and Mrs. Castelli, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our operations meeting started a little late at 7:30 due to a meeting prior that ran over. We started with the approval of the meetings from September's meeting, minutes from September's meeting. Let me gather my tongue here. There was a slot reserved for public comment, but there were no takers. From there, we moved into Mr. Barone's reporting, which projected a 1.016 million surplus at the end of this year. However, this being the first month, there were several fields that will not be populated until we get on with the year. This number will change over time. The main drivers of the surplus were favorable numbers on benefits, transportation, and some contingency. For negatives, we had some overages in salaries, which is to be expected considering the number of one-year contracts we have, as we recover from the challenges around the COVID time learning. We will also most likely have to fund the food service cash flow a bit to enable them to get through the year with another $100,000. This is common for districts around the state as we battle supply shortages and increased demand as students have returned to school and somewhat regular, as in normal lunches. Next, Mr. Bondi gave us his summary of cafeteria operations. We're presently running at a deficit in cash flow of $89,000. So again, we will likely have to fund cafeteria funds from Board of Ed surplus, but we should be looking better toward the November time period when the increased reimbursements come from the state for the increased service that we have experienced at the start of the school year, so long as the reimbursement amounts do not change, of course. On a high note, September saw an increase in meals served by over 311%, so a true testament to the food services team. Mr. Bondi did note that we have been managing well despite food shortages, and he mentioned that Thurston Foods has been a tremendous partner, helping us to meet the increase in demand and shortages in supply. Finally, Mr. Deptula reviewed the project summaries. His team completed a plethora of items, including paving, curb repair, duct cleaning, water heater, and a boiler at various schools. On deck is the removal of the old oil tank at Moran, along with the completion of several other items in progress around the district. I, for one, am happy to see all of these improvements progressing. We adjourned our meeting at 8:24. Anybody have anything to add or correct? Good, all right. So thank you again, Madam Chair, back to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Allenton and Mrs. Castelli. I don't believe there's any new business to come before the board this evening, so we're on to the administrative report. Superintendent Belizzi.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Before I begin on the administrative report, I just wanted to acknowledge 2 donations that we received. One of them was 100 sandwiches from Chick-fil-A with a value of $305, so we appreciate that. And the second one was a large box of apples from Blue Hill Orchard, valued at $35. So we appreciate those. So I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge those donations as well. So thank you. I just wanted to start off by talking a little bit about our in-person parent-teacher conferences that we've had. So far, we've had an opportunity to have almost all of our schools participate in the parent-teacher conferences. We have given parents the option of virtual or in-person. We are through almost all of the schools except the middle schools. Middle schools will be in the beginning of November. They'll have their first round of conferences. But the feedback we've received thus far from the parents and from the administrators has been extremely positive. Parents have really welcomed the opportunity to come into the buildings, to have an opportunity to walk around, to meet the teacher, to see the classrooms where their students are learning every day. The pandemic has really prevented some of them from being able to come into the buildings, so this was a wonderful opportunity, and I'm glad that they were able to have that experience and still have that option if they were not comfortable coming in to make it virtual. So we're excited to see that that's going so well. I did share last week an update with all the families regarding the bus situation. So I do want to acknowledge how hard it is for families right now. I do know it's a challenge with the buses being consistently late, and for their having patience with the timing of when to get their children to the bus stop and when they're going to be back at the bus stop. So we appreciate everyone's flexibility as we move through. We're continuing to meet with the bus company. Unfortunately, with the driver shortage, they're doing the best they can right now to navigate through that. We have contacted people at the state for some assistance, and we're hoping that some of that will come through in the near future and that things will get better for us as we move through. So we're going to continue to stay on top of that and monitor as it goes through. One of the other things I wanted to just mention was there was a change in the protocols for vaccinated staff or vaccinated people or community members. So some of the changes that our nurses and our administrators have been working on is just making sure that we're following those updated protocols. We do sit on the weekly meetings and get the updates from the state and follow the protocols that are coming. So we have been communicating that out as well. So right now, the change has come from the CDC that fully vaccinated people will need to be recommended to be tested 5 to 7 days after a close contact, which is a change. So it is a little bit later than what it was before. Before it was 3 to 5 days after the close contact, now it's 5 to 7. So we have communicated that out. The nurses are making sure, as are the administrators, that everyone is aware of that, but that is a change that has happened. So we'll continue to watch that as we move through and communicate any changes that come through as we move through. This past Thursday, we had an early release day, and we had a wonderful opportunity for our staff to participate in numerous different professional development opportunities. So thank you to Mrs. Latour and her department and Mrs. Turner for setting up all of those wonderful opportunities for our staff, ranging from anything in our math curriculum related to math, to literacy how coming in for opportunities for our staff to work together with their teams, to go through curriculum writing, to plan for future units that they will be teaching. So it was a wonderful opportunity for all of them to kind of come together and to learn, and so we welcome those opportunities. So thank you for planning those for our staff as well. The Educator Evaluation and Support Council has asked all of us, our PTAC meetings, to go back and to meet with our PDAC groups and to solicit some feedback regarding the flexibilities that we've had in place thus far that we've adopted, and some suggestions for moving forward for next year. They are reconvening to look at what the Educator Evaluation Plan is going to look like for the future for next year and forward. So they are asking PDAC committees to commit to filling out a survey and to participating in a forum over the next month to just share some feedback as to what we've been doing thus far and how it's been going and any suggestions that they have. So our PDAC committee is going to reconvene, is going to complete the survey, and then participate in the forums to make sure that they provide feedback. And we'll wait to see what happens and what that will look like for what the plan is for next year for our educators. Dr. Fran Thompson has done a wonderful job collecting all of our vaccinations for our staff, and we are going to be reporting all of that this Friday to the state. The state has asked that under Executive Order 13G that we provide all of our information based on what we have here in our district to the state. So I want to thank Dr. Fran Thompson and Dave Bryant for collecting all of that data for us and getting ready to submit that for us for Friday, October 29th. As we continue to collaborate with Steve Civitelli, he has offered to our staff as well booster clinics. So I have shared with all of our staff that they can receive vaccinations through his department as well. We have shared with them the dates and the locations so that if they are interested in getting a booster vaccine, they can make themselves available to do that after. The hours usually go till 4:30 or so it's been an opportunity for our staff to do that as well. In addition, we've met, our central office team has met with Steve Civitelli and Kathy Nealon to anticipate the approval of the vaccine for the 5 to 11-year-olds and trying to organize a clinic through Griffin Hospital to set up probably mid-November, we're thinking, to do vaccines, to see if our staff or our families are interested in having their children vaccinated. We are going to provide a location locally here in town and 2 Saturdays, so it'll be for the first dose and then 3 weeks later for the second dose of the Pfizer when that is approved. So more information will be coming out about that, but we're looking forward to collaborating that and offering that for our families. One of the last things we're excited about, as one of our students reps had shared, is that the students at both high schools are very excited for the homecoming dances this weekend. So they have Lyman Hall on Friday night, October 29th, and then they have Sheehan Saturday night on October 30th. Both of them will be held outside. Both administrators from both high schools have done a wonderful job planning what that will look like. It will be outside for 3 hours from 7 to 10. There is no food being served. They will have water available, obviously. They'll be outside enjoying the time albeit a little bit cold maybe, but having a good time and at least having the experience. So I'm sure it will be a good time had by all, so we're looking forward to that. And I think that's all we have for right now.
Thank you, Superintendent Belizzi. We're on to announcements. Monday, November 1st, 2021 will be the next instructional committee meeting via Google Meet at 6:30 p.m. Monday, November 8th, 2021 will be the next operations committee meeting via Google Meet at 6:30 p.m. And the date of our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be Monday, November 22nd, 2021, right here in the Robert F. Parisi Town Council Chambers at 6:30 p.m. If there is no further business of an official nature to come before the board this evening, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mrs. Allenson moves, second by Mr. Ross. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you very much.